The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Let me just say, after video distorting the belt to proclaim me the real world champion, I'm going to tell you all with a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment in my life. When you walk around this world and you tell everybody you're number one, the only way you get to stay number one is to be number one.
Good morning, everybody. It's Monday, June the 5th. Welcome to another week here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Hope you had a great weekend. I know I did. A lot of sports going on, a lot of things in the world of sports, and we want to take this time to welcome you aboard on this June the 5th. We'll talk a lot about the NBA Finals. Game 2 in the books last night. Miami, of course, evened up the series at one game apiece. And for those of you that thought it was going to be a sweep, well, it looks like we might be in for a long series, and that's nothing but good news for us sports fans. So we'll talk a lot about that. The NHL Finals, the Stanley Cup Finals got underway on Saturday. Vegas opened up with a big win on Saturday night, overpowering the Florida Panthers, and they won 5-2. So now they are up 1-0. Game 2 is tonight in Vegas, and Florida will look to even it up. And if you're Vegas, looking to keep it just like it's been, and keep the foot on the throttle to go up 2-0. We'll look at the MLB and take a look at the standings going into this week, and we'll find a couple of surprises, some teams on the move that you might not think we're going to make some hay here this year, and a couple of teams still struggling. We'll go through the standings there and a couple of stories there in the NFL, as well as some coaching hires and a couple of coaching moves in the NHL and the NBA, and maybe a significant free agent move in the NFL. And if we got time, we'll talk about some of the other potential free agency movements that may be coming up this week as salary cap ramifications change now that June 1st has come upon us. And we'll talk a little bit about that here as the show goes on. You can join us here on the show, here on the Captain Lou Sports Network. We invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can take a look back at all the great interviews that we've had, some of the shows we've had in the past. Last Friday, for example, a fantastic interview with Max Bultman of The Athletic, talking about the Stanley Cup playoffs and what's up for our Detroit Red Wings coming up in the NHL draft towards the end of June. Also, last week, we talked to Chris Mascaro. Great interview. I've got it posted on my Facebook page as well. We took an excerpt of that talking about the Live Tour golfers and should they be in the Ryder Cup, and also previewing the upcoming U.S. Open here in a couple of weeks. So some great interviews that we've had. You can check those out on our YouTube channel, which is the Captain Lou Sports Network. You can follow us on Twitter at The Real Captain Lou, or again, drop me an email, sweetlou1965 at yahoo.com. And of course, our show is always sponsored by MahlerBros.com. Check out their website, MahlerBros.com, for the best selection of golf shirts, polos, T-shirts, whatever. They've got sleek designs. You can look a little loud or maybe look a little more conservative, whatever suits your fancy. But the great thing with the stretch material is you look and feel good on the golf course. And as we always say, if you look good, you feel good. You feel good, you play good. It gets all upstairs, man. It can give you that little extra edge on the golf course or wherever you may be. Just feeling good about yourself when you're out and about. That's on MahlerBros.com. And, of course, use the promo code BELLYUP at purchase, and you'll get 15% off that purchase price as well. So can't beat that with a stick. All right, we're live, as we mentioned, here on this Monday, June the 5th, 2023. The NBA Finals, Game 2 last night up in Denver. And Miami looked to even the series after the original game the other night, Thursday night. That I don't know, Denver kind of won that. That pretty much went as we figured it would. You know, Miami came in with adrenaline, but Denver was able to stymie them and, again, had played their game. But, it was crazy as last night. It just looked like a different feel to the game. Even though Denver was up, they were up double digits, I believe, in the opening quarter or opening half and into the third quarter. It was cut to 5 at halftime. It just had a different feel. Miami, they took it to Denver, especially in the fourth quarter. And, it's basic. You can sit and diagram it all day long. And, if you're Miami, what I liked about it is they just hit their shots. They hit their threes and they played flawless. Now, here's my question. Denver didn't make their shots. And when you talk about basic strategy of making your shots and playing defense, Miami hit the shots. They hit the shots that they didn't hit in game one. And, I like the pressure they had on defense. They went to the hoop. And the crazy thing is, I don't think Jimmy Butler had his best game. He had 21 points last night, but when you can count on Duncan Robinson and Bam Adebayo, and to take some of the heat off of them, you look at the box score from last night. Kevin Love started in place of Caleb Martin, and I thought Love played good. He only had 6 points, but you look at Vincent, 23 points, Strus with 14. Again, Bam Adebayo, another game over 20 points. And if he continues that, I think that's obviously going to be a difference maker. When you don't have to count on Jimmy Butler to get you 40 points or over 30 points, take some of the heat off of him, maybe being a little more of a facilitator, it definitely does open it up. And Miami took Denver out of their game. I thought they obviously didn't make their shots. And the Joker, he had 41 points. They took away a little bit of his ability to be a playmaker last night. And again, you look at the box score one more time. If you're Denver, Jokic, 41 points, 11 rebounds, just 4 assists. Aaron Gordon with 12 points. Jamal Murray with 18. They were able to hold down Michael Porter Jr. to just 5. Brown came off the bench with 11. You don't have that. You didn't have that disbursement that Denver had in the opening game where they had 6 players in double figures. It was Miami's turn with 5 players in double figures. And again, even Kyle Lowry getting some good minutes off the bench, 24 minutes, 9 points. Now you look at game 3 coming up on Wednesday night. And, we talked on Friday. I know we thought, if Denver played like that, then it was going to be a quick series. It was going to be over in 5. Miami made some adjustments. They made a few adjustments, but it just came down to, I thought Miami had better shot selection. They had better looks than Denver did, especially in the fourth quarter. Miami had that big fourth quarter. And now that you look back on it and you think, all right, what does Denver do in game 3? Well, we talk about it. The main thing I believe is they've got to make their 3-pointers. They got to make their shots, not just the 3-pointers. Both teams, the one thing that I did notice about their run into the finals, is that they're not so dependent on the 3-pointer as a team like Boston was, or even the Lakers. They took the Lakers, Denver did, out of their game. And I think if they go back to where Denver can use maybe Jokic a little more of a facilitator, like I said, he only had 4 assists. Now, here's the thing that I always think about too is, we as a fan get used to seeing Jokic, we expect that out of him every night, where a triple-double, where he'll get 35 points, 18 rebounds and 14 assists. That's become commonplace. Now, is it fair to expect him to do that every night? No, it's not. And then you got to get some of the other players maybe to make their shots, as we talked about. Michael Porter Jr. had an off night by his standards. KCP hasn't really played all that great here in the finals. I think he only had 6 points last night. He kind of looked out of sorts. And you could tell that Denver was a little out of sync last night. And it's something that they're not used to. They're not used to losing at home. What is it? It's the first game that they've lost in a month. You think about that for a second. They swept LA, and they won the last 2 or 3 games in the finals or in the playoff series before that. So it literally has been about a month since they've lost a game, and especially at home. And, how do they react to that? We've got 2 excellent coaches. Obviously Eric Spoelstra is, I would say, if he's not the best coach in the NBA, he's right up there. And Mike Malone's right behind him. Now, these guys are old school. They're already chirping at the media. Not really chirping, but, they're surly. You could tell. I mean, so I don't think there's reason to panic yet if you're Denver. Miami's not going to lay down. And we talked about this on Friday as well with Miami. If you're going to expect, if you're Miami, you can't expect to be bailed out by Denver going 12 out of 67 in a stretch of 3-pointers. Miami's going to have to play a little better on the defensive end. Now, I think, again, the adrenaline of winning that 7-game series in Boston and, just not really a quick turnaround time, but getting used to the altitude and whatnot, you can say that probably was a factor in game 1, not taking anything away from Denver. They just played great. They played their game, and Miami played their game in game 2. So it's going to come down to who can establish that momentum in game 3. I don't know how much of a must game it is in game 3. I know Denver is a 2-point favorite already in, going to Miami for game 3. They're going to have to adjust to maybe the heat or a little, no pun intended, or maybe a little bit of the humidity factor or whatever that they're not used to playing in Denver. Miami will have that advantage, but the nice thing now is, again, they get 3 days in between games. They don't play game 3 until Wednesday night. So obviously, if there's time to work on something, I don't know, maybe they have that time. But what adjustments do you make? In my opinion, I just think Denver, they didn't make their shots. It's that simple. And Miami made theirs. Now, Miami maybe made a few more 3-pointers, obviously, than they did in game 1, but they made their shots. And I just don't know, what kind of a difference, what can you do to strategize any different for game 3? Obviously Miami's got to get they got to keep getting more players involved. That their bench play was big. Again, Duncan Robinson, what I like about his game is when he's not shooting, he's a good decoy. Getting those 10 points, making Denver's defense have to think a little more about him. They didn't have to do that in game 1. To me, that was one of the big adjustments too. Now he's out there as a decoy. You got to pay a little more attention to him. And again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. When Jimmy Butler, quote unquote, only had 21 points, it wasn't one of his better games. Again, maybe we're used to seeing him pour in 30 to 35 points, just like the Joker. They have set the bar so high in the playoffs, especially with Butler. When he only scores 21, everybody thinks he doesn't play good. I mean, he was dishing it out. He was a little more of a facilitator. And, that's big for Miami too. There's so many different ways you can look at this. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, but the one thing you got to keep in mind, and this is what kind of drives me crazy with what, I see with a lot of people, and you learn a lot by watching other people talk about the game. And it all goes back to me with what I tend to like to listen and watch the players that are analysts as opposed to guys like me who haven't played the game is, everybody was first to point out the weaknesses of Denver in game 2. But Miami, they won that game. They forced these weaknesses, and I don't think they get enough credit for that. And, I think they made the adjustments, whatever tweaks they had to make in game 2. They earned that win by making their shots, maybe playing a little more defense, and they got Denver out of their game. And you could tell in the fourth quarter, the frustration started to set in towards the end, and it played right into Miami's hands. Now, I know Denver had a chance to tie it up at the end, and I personally am not, one of the first questions this morning was, should they have taken a timeout? And what Kendrick Perkins said was perfect. He said, no, you give Miami a chance to set up on defense. I thought it was a decent look on that 3-pointer. They make it, they go into overtime. Who knows? They might, they pull it off. So I didn't mind that decision not to hit the three or not to take the timeout. So what do so now it just goes back to game 3. And that's the beauty. We've got two teams that, this is going to be a slugfest. This is going to, it's probably going to go, I picked Denver in 5. I still think there's an opportunity. If Denver wins game 3, then their possibility is going to lurk. But this Miami team is so resilient. To count them out as crazy is ludicrous. They've got home court advantage now. It's their job to keep it up. Can they keep the home court advantage? They win these next 2 games, it's going to be huge, obviously. They go back to Denver with a chance to clinch it. But I just have a feeling that Denver's going to win at least one down in Miami, take it back to Denver at 2-2. We'll find out Wednesday night with game 3. That's the beauty of it. But it's turning out to be a pretty good series. And I just like the intensity. I like how Miami played. And I think, and I'm just as guilty of this, is that we forget Miami was the number 1 team in the NBA in the Eastern Conference last year. So they know what it takes to win. They've been to the finals in the last few years. They were the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They're no stranger to this pressure situation and what it takes to get to this point. And, they're right there. They made a statement last night, and I think it's a good thing. Now we're set up for potentially a long series that could go 7. So, which is great for us sports fans, especially in June, if you like championship basketball. So the NBA Finals game 3 on Wednesday night. We're going to talk a little bit about the Stanley Cup Finals, but first, want to remind everybody that we are brought to you, as always, here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza, here on the Captain Lou Sports Network by MahlerBros.com. And I want to tell you that, with the weather being as it is now, it's getting a little warmer. Summertime is here. Well, not technically, but it is in my book. And whether you're out on the golf course or you're going, you're going out to dinner, going to a, graduation party or whatever, and it's warm outside, and you're out and the sun's beating down, you're starting to sweat, you're feeling uncomfortable. If you're on the golf course, it may do a little bit to your game. You're kind of cranky and, you make a couple bad shots or whatever. Then you're thinking, oh my gosh, man, this is miserable. Or if you're at that gathering, you're at a parade, whatever, outdoor party, and you're overheated. There's nothing, man, that's horrible. Well, I've got just the answer for you. MahlerBros.com. They've got the lightweight stretch material that will keep you comfortable on the golf course or at that barbecue or whatever. And as you say, if you're out golfing or whatever, you look good, you feel good. You feel good, you play good. You get that confidence level and you get that swagger. On the golf course, it'll help you maybe have that mental edge to make that long putt. Get that par, get that birdie putt to get you back to maybe, even, or if you're like me, maybe to bogey golf, which, is a victory in itself. So check out MahlerBros.com for their awesome selection of the sleek fitting tees. They've got the louder designs or the more conservative designs. Also their t-shirts, tumblers, mugs, you name it. Check out MahlerBros.com. And as you can see on the bottom of the screen, use the promo code BELLYUP and you will get 15% off your purchase at the checkout. So that's MahlerBros.com. Use the promo code BELLYUP, 15% off your discount. And it's that simple. And again, you'll look good on the golf course and you'll feel good. And who knows, it'll help your score. You'll play good as well. That's MahlerBros.com. All right. Again, we welcome you to the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the Captain Lou Sports Network on YouTube. We invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel for all of our past shows, all the things we've got going on. We've got a lot in store for you this year. And when football season starts, man, it is going to go full bore. And we've got a lot of exciting things planned. So make sure you stick around and you stay tuned for us here on the Captain Lou Sports Network on YouTube. And we've also have our ACHA Power Play podcast, quite popular. That will start back up in the fall once the season gets underway in September, where we have a weekly show with guests and players and all kinds of interviews. We keep you up to date on everything going on in the American Collegiate Hockey Association. The road to St. Louis will start up in earnest on us in September. So we invite you to stick around for that as well. Speaking of hockey, the Stanley Cup Finals got underway on Saturday night, Vegas and Florida in Las Vegas for game one. And again, what can you say about how they do it in Las Vegas? They pull out all the stops. The pregame shows are amazing, and it gets you fired up. And Vegas made a statement in game one. They came out smoking. And what I liked about Florida, what I liked about it, they were able to withstand that first 5 minutes, and then Eric Stahl got that shorthanded goal to go up 1-0. But one thing that was uncharacteristic with the Florida Panthers was their special teams, and they gave up the power play goal to Marchessault, his 10th goal of the playoffs, and he was able to tie it up at 1. And then it was 2-2 going into the third period, and then Zach Whitecloud on a beauty of a move off a nice feed from Shea Theodore, from Jack Eichel, made it 3-2, and Vegas went on to win 5-2. Big statement game in game one. These two teams, they're very strong. They're very deep teams. They're physical. I think they kind of goated Florida a little bit. Nothing bad, but they just got them out of their game. And that's one of the things I look for. We talked about this with Max Bultman on Friday from The Athletic, was, who's going to stay disciplined? And I think Vegas was able to, be the more disciplined team. A couple of misconducts on Florida's end was big. But, what impressed me the most about game one was the defenseman of Vegas showing up. Shea Theodore, we talk about him. Another name that you don't think, when you think off the top, you think who are going to be the big scorers, who are going to be the big contributors. And that's not a name that you think of. And he was huge for Vegas in game one. And again, Zach Whitecloud with the game winner at the beginning of the third period, or actually at the 6:59 mark. He got his second goal of the playoffs. Barbashev with his 10th assist, and Eichel with his 13th. Mark Stone, again, that's a name that we thought might be big in game one. He got his unassisted goal, and then Riley Smith on the empty netter with a little under 2 minutes to go in the third period. They again played big, and another stat, or another, again, Vegas was 2 out of 7 on the power play, and we talked about it at the beginning of this series. Florida was able to stymie Carolina's power play. They were 0 for 8 with the extra man through the 4 games. Maybe I think Vegas is a little more high-powered than Carolina. Carolina might be a little more balanced, but you got Vegas now. This is a little different team. Their 4 lines, I think, are a little more. Maybe the intensity is a little better for Vegas. Their firepower, but their power play 2 out of 7 on Monday, or on Saturday night. Now it's game 2. And this is a big game for Florida. If they, they're by no means out of it. No reason to panic yet. It's just like the NBA Finals. If they can get one here tonight in Vegas and go back to Florida with it 1-1, then they've got an opportunity to really make hay with home court or home ice advantage. Vegas has got to keep the pedal on the metal. We talked about it with Max on Friday. One of the things I liked about Vegas is that they like to get out quick and get out fast, and they tried that against Florida. And Bobrovsky was big in that opening period. I thought he really held his own, kept them into the game. But sooner or later, just I thought that on the defensive end, obviously Vegas had the advantage, and I thought maybe Florida might have stepped off the gas just a hair in that third period, and Vegas was able to take advantage of it. So now, again, we've got game 2 coming up tonight. Aiden Hill, I thought, played very, very strong for Vegas and net. Bobrovsky, I didn't think he played bad. You look back at the stats and shots on goal. I thought, Vegas was right there. Florida outshot him 35-34. I just thought that the scoring chances obviously were a little more in Vegas's end, but other than that, it was pretty even. Again, Florida, though, has to stay disciplined. You can't give of a team like Vegas, 7 power plays like they did the other night. If they do that, then Vegas is going to obviously be on top and make it a 2-0 matchup. I think that as simple as it sounds, they've got to stay disciplined, stay out of the penalty box, make it a more of a 5-on-5 game. And you can ask your power play or your special teams, to keep you in the games. But, you look back on it, Carolina only had 8 power plays. I know it was a 4-game series, 0 for 8 with the extra man, 7 power plays for Vegas in the first game. That's something that they're going to have to avoid if they want to stay in this matchup, if they want to stay in the series. So big game tonight. I'd look for Florida maybe to bounce back a little bit, play a little more discipline. But one of the things I like about, Paul Maurice, at least in front of the camera, and they seem loose, and they should be. He's keeping that mentality with them. And I read a great interview on the NHL on NHL.com about that, where the team is staying loose, and they've got that mentality, not necessarily playing on house money, but they've got that loose mentality, and I think that's great for them. So we'll see what happens. Game 2 coming up tonight, 8:00 on TNT. We'll keep an eye on that. And of course, we'll have a complete breakdown on that on Wednesday, as Game 3 of the NBA Finals won't be till Wednesday night, so we'll have a lot more attention to spend on Game 2 of the NHL Stanley Cup Finals. Speaking of the NHL, we had a coaching move. It looks like Mike Babcock, who is going to be finished with his contract with Toronto, I think the end of June. So it sounds like he'll be the new head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. A little surprised. It's so funny is never say never when it comes to Mike Babcock or anybody anymore in the NHL, because you read all the interviews that said after he was done in Toronto, he was all done coaching. Never again. He was all done. I know he was coaching a little bit in Canada with the college team up in Saskatchewan, I believe. He's back in Columbus. Is that going to be a good fit or not? I don't know. He comes with a little bit of baggage. You hear some of his a lot of his ex-players didn't like him. A lot, a bully. That was one of the phrases that he was called. He's a winner, and that's the thing. But my question is, and this is a young team, a team that maybe has underachieved a little bit. What's his patient level going to be with the younger players? That's the thing. A lot of times he doesn't have that, and he showed that in Toronto. Now, granted, he took over a Toronto team that was struggling, but right now he's got nothing. Not nothing, but what is his tolerance level going to be in Columbus? Is he going to want them to make moves to get some veteran players in there to try to maybe excel or accelerate the rebuild process? That's what I'm going to look at with Mike Babcock, and how are the players going to respond to his ways? All I can think of is how New York tuned out and did not like Gerard Gallant. And you got a guy like Babcock, who I think is along that same pedigree. Does that work with the players in this day and age? I don't know. That's going to, with, him and Tortorella, that's kind of what I think of as well. So, wow, that's a little bit of a surprise. I didn't see Mike Babcock going there, but maybe he can work. Like I said, he's got a winning track record. Anaheim, Detroit, he won a cup in Detroit. He's been to 3 Stanley Cup Finals, 2 at Detroit, 1 with Anaheim. He couldn't get Toronto to that next step. But we'll have to wait and see how he does in Columbus. Will he be the difference to get them back in relevancy in the NHL, get them back into playoffs, and who knows? And so interesting sign up. And I put on there Patrick Waugh. I thought, it looks like that he's going to be shut out of NHL coaching rumors or jobs unless something drastically changes in New York or whatever. They just won the Memorial Cup. He did. I know he had a short stint, I believe, with Colorado, and I know he wants to get back into coaching. Will he ever get another opportunity maybe to be a head coach in the NHL? I know he's interviewed with some of these places. So another competitor who was a winner as a player. And I don't know if he was really given a good enough chance in as a head coach in Colorado. We'll find out. But I had to throw that in there. It just popped into my head as I was preparing for the show this morning. So elsewhere in the NHL, Cole Caulfield signed a 7-year, $7.85 average annual value contract with the Montreal Canadiens. He's going to be locked up. Now, the beauty of this for him, he's only 23 years old, and I think it's a guaranteed contract, $63 million. He had 26 goals, I believe, in 35 games before he got he missed the rest of the year in February with shoulder surgery. He'll be back ready to go for Montreal at the start of the year. I think it's a good signing. I think he's someone that they can build around, a potential 35 to 40 goal a year scorer for the Canadiens. And I think it's a good price and it's good for him. But when this contract expires, he'll be 30 years old. So, he'll still technically be in his prime, and he can get another big deal at the end of that contract. So I think it's a good deal both ways, in my opinion. I like the signing. I think he's a good young player. It's a good pillar for the Canadiens to build around. So Caulfield will get 7 years, again, $62.5 million guaranteed with the Montreal Canadiens, and that'll lock him up until he's 30 years old. So I like the signing with the Canadiens. And in other coaching news, real quick, back to the NFL, or the NBA rather, it sounds like Frank Vogel is going to be named as the head coach in Phoenix. So here's a guy that won a championship in the bubble with the Lakers. And this is going to be a guy, he coached LeBron, but was LeBron the coach? That's what everybody talks about. Now, is he more of a player's coach than Monty Williams is? Rumor has it that's his style. That's a guy that Kevin Durant, obviously he wanted Monty Williams out, and what he wanted, he got. Ishbia said, okay, you're out. So now they've got a guy like Frank Vogel in there. I mean, the guy's a winner, but he had a lot of talent around him in LA. He had a healthy AD and, of course, LeBron. Now he's going to be going to Phoenix with Kevin Durant and Booker and, DeAndre Ayton maybe. But they've got some pieces there to, and obviously they're a winning team over 50 games. They got to the NBA Finals a couple of years ago. Frank Vogel, he knows what it takes to get to that level, to get that championship. So is it a good fit? Probably. It's what the players want. Now, it's a players' league, like we say, especially when you got a veteran-laden team. So we'll find out if he's a good fit for Vegas or not. So, again, kind of interesting signing there. I'm not surprised, a coach with that mentality. If you're not a player's coach, I think it only works really with the younger guys, and then you got to win to keep that locker room. And, a guy like Dwayne Casey in Detroit, he came from Toronto where he was coach of the year before Nick Nurse took them over the edge to Detroit, and he had a long run with them, and they tuned him out. Even the rookies did. So it was time to move on. So a guy like Monty Williams going to Detroit, I think will help them. He's good with the younger talent, but, the players, it's a players run league. So I think maybe Frank Vogel might work better for the older established veterans. But then again, you look at what Durant did in Brooklyn. They wanted Steve Nash in there as a head coach, and then 2 years later they wanted him out. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that one with Frank Vogel. In the NFL, news this morning that Leonard Floyd signed with the Bills. Big signing for them. So he's, I think he's, he had 9 sacks last year with the Rams. So that'll bolster the Bills' defensive side of the ball. That's big. I like that signing with Buffalo. Now, what's next in the free agency world? The big name I think that everybody's talking about is DeAndre Hopkins. Could he be following Leonard Floyd to Buffalo? That's the big rumor. Or Kansas City. And I know he even, as far-fetched as it sounds, even here in Detroit, they're looking at the possibility of bringing him in. But here's my question. It's the number one question. He wants bank. He wants $20 to $23 million a year. He wants, Odell Beckham type money. And I don't know if Detroit can fit that into their cap or, anybody like if Buffalo or these teams can. Will he take less money to go to a team like Kansas City or Buffalo? It would almost seem unfair if he went to Kansas City. It's just the rich get richer. But hey, if he goes there, that's great. And I think he would be a good signing in Buffalo. Would I like him in Detroit? I just don't know. I mean, only if they sign him to a one-year deal, and I don't know if he's looking for a one-year deal. I don't know if he wants multi-year. If that's the case, then I wouldn't sign him in Detroit. I just this is two teams now that he's wanted out, and with Deshaun Watson, and then in Arizona with Kyler Murray. So, but Kyler Murray, I get it. Not a lot of people respect him in Arizona. So, the one hand, if you're Detroit, getting a guy like that, if it's a one-year deal, then he'll be playing for a bigger contract next year. He wants to maybe prove himself. That I would do in that scenario, because you've got Jamison Williams coming in. He's going to be the number one guy. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think he's a good number two option for Detroit. You've got Marvin Jones Jr. who will be a good mentor for Williams, I hope. They can get Williams, get him to smarten up a little bit with his gambling. And because, got to keep his head in the game. I think he could be a dynamic receiver, if he's smart off the field. But I don't know if if Hopkins is that good of an influence for him off the field as well in Detroit. So a lot of questions there. And then with mini camps coming up in the NFL, brings up the quarterback questions in Vegas and San Francisco just right off the top. We heard the news this past week about Vegas with Jimmy G with all his injury concerns. It poses some interesting questions. I mean, they don't have much to back him up in Vegas. Is he going to be ready to go? And my big question in San Francisco, I know they've got this all-world defense, and that carried them to the championship game, and that's great. But can Brock Purdy, even if he's healthy, do what he did last year? And, what are they going to do with Trey Lance? And then you got Sam Darnold, who, how many chances is Sam Darnold going to get? How many excuses is he going to get? I still think he's going to be the day one starter. I don't know if Purdy's going to be ready. If he is, obviously it'll be him. But is he going to, the 7th round draft pick, he was the big story last year in San Francisco. Is he going to be able to keep that up this year in San Francisco? And again, you can have the best defense in the world, but if you can't put points up now, I know they did, and they got Deebo Samuel and they got Christian McCaffrey. That helps, and George Kittle. But, you got to have a playmaking quarterback that's going to be consistent throughout the year and stay healthy. And that's been the issue with San Francisco, getting to that next level, winning that Super Bowl, getting there when they've got such a great defense. So those are going to be a couple of questions to keep an eye on. Vegas on one end, you wonder how long they go before they think, all right, maybe we're just going to tank. And then, we'll go for the Caleb Williams sweepstakes, because that's going to start to linger, and, he's kind of a local guy, Vegas, pretty close to California, we'll have to wait and see on that. And then, some of the other teams, that's going to be my, one of the teams that I'm going to keep an eye on. And we're going to talk more about that once the finals are over in NHL and the Stanley and the NBA finals. We're going to start diving into more of these free agency questions in the month of July as we get set for the NFL training camps to start in the end of July. It's less than 2 months away before they really start to kick in now, as mini camps will end here in the end of in the next week or so. So finally, this morning here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza, again, we thank you for joining us here. We're always, as always, powered up by Belly Up Sports. Check out our website, bellyupsports.com. Our complete lineup of podcasts that we have throughout the year. We cover everything in the world of sports and entertainment as well. And check out our complete lineup of writers and guests or I should say writers, as we cover all the sports in there. Some in-depth interviews, some great pieces. We've got a great group here at bellyupsports.com. So I invite you to check out our website, Belly Up Sports, for a complete list of our podcasts. Some great shows. I've had a chance to be on as a guest on a few of them. It's a lot of fun. And the guys and gals that do the articles as well here at Belly Up do a tremendous job. So bellyupsports.com. I invite you to check that out as well. Major League Baseball. Just want to kind of take a look at the standings. We didn't get a chance to do that on Friday. We got so busy with other things going on. let's take a look at the standings right now in the Major League Baseball. And one of the things that catches my eye here as we come into the weekend, we come into June 5th. We always talk about the measuring stick points. Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day. Those are kind of like the quarter poles, if you will. And right now, Arizona in a first place tie with the Dodgers. Can they keep it up? They've got a good young core pitching. They lost last night, I believe, but still, they're right there. And they're in a first place tie with the Los Angeles Dodgers, 35-25, a dead heat. They've lost 2 in a row, but they're still tied with the Dodgers, who've lost a couple in a row too to the New York Yankees. The Giants, 5.5 out, under 500, but right now it's a 2-horse race in the West. We expect the Dodgers to be there every year. And the Dodgers, what I like about LA is they're starting to mix in some young talent in with some of the veterans. Clayton Kershaw still is the leader of that team. And but they've got a good blend in their pitching staff, and that's key in my opinion. And the Dodgers now, even with the Diamondbacks, and in the National League East, you've got Atlanta. Their lead is cut now to 3.5 over Miami. The Mets kind of fading a little bit. They're still 5.5 out, but they're right at the 500 mark. The Braves, 5-5 in their last 10. They've won a couple in a row, but the Marlins, again, how do they do it? They're kind of like Tampa Bay, except the Marlins tend to wilt a little bit more than Tampa Bay does. We'll see if they can keep up that rush here towards the, as we go into the dog days in July. And what's always the question with Miami, what do they do at the deadline? Do they sell? Do they try to acquire maybe a bat or two? They're not exactly the most team that spends the most money for free agency, but they're right there right now in second place in the National League East behind Atlanta. And the thing that jumps out to me with the standings in the National League, I mean, you've got 3 teams with 10 games over 500, and you've got, and that's it. Now you look at in the American League, you can see the disparity now between the haves and the have-nots. And again, you look at the American League East, Tampa Bay on top, 42-19. They've got a 4-game lead over Baltimore, playing lights out, 37-22, really playing well. The Yankees, of course, they won the series in LA. They're 10 games or 11 games over 500, 6 games out of first place. In Toronto, they've won 4 straight after they had a little bit of a slide. They're 33-27. And then Minnesota, 2 games over 500, just like the Milwaukee Brewers. Milwaukee now 5 games over 500, but the Brewers or the Twins, 2 games over 500. They've got a 3.5 game lead over Cleveland and Detroit. Detroit with a golden opportunity to go into Chicago, even if they would have won 1 game, they would have been only 2.5 out. They get swept. They're 3.5 games out, and the White Sox 9 games under 500, and they're only 5.5 games out of first. And again, another surprise team, I think, Texas. They've won 3 straight, 38-20. They've got a 3.5 game lead over Houston, who's 35-24. The Angels, kind of middling. Seattle, I thought would play better. They've lost 3 in a row now. They're under 500, but Texas. To me, I look at Texas not really as a surprise, but I love what they're doing right now. Their pitching is incredible. And, Tampa, what can you say? They're keeping that pace up, 42-19. So those are, kind of what we're looking at here at the 60-game mark, about 1/3, a little over 1/3 into the regular season. And the surprise teams, in my opinion, the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Miami Marlins, as we roll on here in June in Major League Baseball. So, well, hey, that's going to about do it here this morning. A lot to look forward to this week on the show. Wednesday, we're going to talk Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals, as it's going to be Vegas looking to go up 2-0 over Florida. And can Florida even it up at 1 apiece? And then they'll go back to Miami. And the sports focus is going to be on the city of Miami, as The NBA Finals and the NHL Stanley Cup Finals are both going to be in town. Man, it's going to be a heck of a party down there in South Beach this week. So the sports world will be down there, and we'll get you all caught up with that with Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals tonight. Game 3 of the NBA Finals will be Wednesday night. We'll preview that again as well. We'll try to get a couple of guests lined up for possibly Wednesday and hopefully on Friday. We'll keep you up to date on that. You can follow us on Twitter at The Real Captain Lou. Follow our Facebook page, The Captain Lou Extravaganza. And, of course, drop me an email, as always, sweetlou1965@yahoo.com. Well, hey, that's going to do it. Enjoy your Monday, everybody. Enjoy the Stanley Cup playoffs tonight, Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals, as I mentioned. Hope your team does good in the Major League Baseball or NFL or whatever. But get out and enjoy the day. It's a Monday, but, hey, we're going to kick its butt, aren't we? And we'll be talking about all the goings-on in the world of sports. We'll see you Wednesday on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Hey, this reminder, keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. Thanks for joining us here on the show. We'll be back on Wednesday, 10 o'clock, with another edition of the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the Captain Lou Sports Network. Until then, so long.